And welcome back. This is Mastering the Shift, Living Your Noetic Reality. I'm your host, Rebecca Skeele, here with Dr. Robert Waterman, and we are talking about noetic balancing. Robert, let's talk specifically about the balancing itself and what takes place. Could you begin to share about how the noetic balancing is engaged and cleared in our ability to engage the blocks that are in the aura, the personal aura and beyond, what techniques are used, like self-forgiveness, that kind of thing?
Sure. Let me start by just asking all the listeners to take a certain perspective here. There's a great confluence between quantum physics and spiritual understanding. I like to call it, we're creating a spiritual physics now. But there's this understanding that everything is one. There's just an intelligence through everything. And the physical reality is a result of something unfolding from a deeper dimension. So we're actually in this field of energy. And what becomes physically concrete is a result of what happens in that deeper field. So the physical's most dense, and then around that there's layers of this what they call in quantum physics implicate order. In other words, an inner structure of reality in which unfolds into this one. So when we talk about, we have a sense of this, like we say, oh, my space, or you're in my space, or you violated me. See, and the person hadn't even touched you. These are all statements of an awareness that there's a field of energy around us. So I'd like you to imagine that everything, every decision you made, every belief you formed, there was a moment when it was conscious, and then you went on to the next thing. And what happened to that? Well, then it drops into the unconscious. And we might see that as, well, where's that? Some people think it's in the nerve endings, but those are actually connections into the field. And so the beliefs actually are forms, are things that are, one thing you might say is, well, reach your arms out. With an arm's reach around your body is all your personal beliefs that you've created. And so there's this relationship you have at life where we're the center point of it. Then we look out at life, and life is a mirror, a reflection back to us. So that's a natural relationship. But in that become all of our beliefs and things we decided and all of our prejudices. So that colors or determines not only what we see, but how life responds to us, because that information tells life how you see it, so it responds to how you see it. So that's the context, that's the setup. So in the balancing, it's a direct application of that. We have a practitioner whose training is to stay very aligned with their center, which is like the human consciousness has the ability to connect heaven and earth, actually. And so when we're aligned that, we're in more of our spirit alignment. We're sourcing ourselves out of our soul as to who we are, rather than who we think we are. As an ego, we decide who we are based on what we believe. So in this alignment, there's a very powerful relationship. So when we come into rapport with a person who wants a balancing, their wanting one is important. In this elevated consciousness, in this frequency, there's a condition that exists, a field of relationship where there's the client, the practitioner, and then connected into this larger field of energy that is the balance of everything. And so any belief that the person has that distorts or separates from themselves takes them out of connection with this greater field of life and vitality. So that shows up in some way. We develop our sensitivity, so we become aware of where these formations are that somehow disrupt this field. And so when we engage them, often in that condition of relationship that I just described, some of them will just change. They'll just fall apart and reorganize themselves in terms of the alignment of the person, the client, with their connection to spirit. Other ones, though, they've created a judgment of some kind. Now, the way this works is that in their life experience, something has happened. Say somebody abuses them, like they get beat up a lot growing up, and so they respond to that, and they have to make sense out of it. So they decide maybe they're unworthy or they're no good or something like that, and that forms a belief. And then that belief, once it's in the field, it starts coloring how they see things. So we find that they decided because they were beat all the time that they're a bad person. And that's not true. That's just what they decided because they were beat. So when that becomes conscious and they can look at that, they say, oh, I need to reconcile this. I need to make amends with myself. And so the fastest way is to say, I forgive myself for believing that I'm a bad person and unworthy just because of what happened to me. And then I usually have them take a deep breath, which kind of distracts their mind and lets that move. And there's a reworking of that energy where the judgment changes. The fact that they got beat doesn't change it, but what they decided about themselves. So this relieves them from the effect. And so the part of them that they had trapped in that belief that says, I'm no good, I'm unworthy, returns to their center. And in their center, they're worthy, their wholeness, their essence, they're loving. And so that reintegrates that, changes how they look at life, changes how life responds to them. Now, there's another mechanic in this where in our personality, there's this relationship of what I call basic self, or the body brain, and that's the one that works with survival, and that's the level at which we believe we think we're who we believe we are. And so to maintain the continuity of life, you negotiate life to reaffirm that you're a bad and worthy person as long as you have that belief. Then there's the conscious self that is acquiring new experiences, that's trying to figure things out, that is the one listening right now. And then this is what we call the high self. Well, it's a spiritual aspect of our personality that retains its spirituality. And that's the authority from which we forgive. So as soon as we forgive ourselves, and the spiritual consciousness is very interesting. It never inflicts on anything because it's based on unconditional love, so it can't. It has to support whatever crazy reality you want to believe in until you say, I'm going to change it. So in the self-forgiveness statement, I'm going to change this. So it gives the spiritual level permission to come in and change it. And it also gives a direction to the basic self that we're changing this because you're in charge of your consciousness. The basic self likes guidance and direction. It does what you tell it. Like, for instance, it was going on promoting a reality that you were unworthy because you thought so. And so it said, oh, we're changing this. And so that brings the basic self, conscious self, high self back into alignment with your own soul nature. And so that shifts your awareness of yourself back to your truth and away from this false belief you have.
And my experience of having done noetic balancing as well is this is one, I think, the most liberating experiences that people can begin to have for themselves is, first of all, they realize they have a choice. And then that choice is about loving. And it accesses that inner authority that I've experience in myself and with others that we know is in there, and yet we perhaps have never given ourselves permission to access it. We've never felt worthy of it. We've never felt deserving of it. And when we begin to access it and use it, it's like the whole world, our whole orientation to the world begins to shift.
Yeah, I really like that. A lot of the religious training we get is that the authority is outside of you.
Yes.
And when you look back at what, say, Jesus said, or any of the great teachers, they no, it's inside of you. Say, oh yeah, okay. So then we look. So once we get this, see, in a larger way, the whole process of making up distorted beliefs and then resolving them. Well, that's one level, but that's teaching you something. That's teaching you that the authority is inside of you, and not only teaching you that, but it's teaching you how to work it, how to live from that place. And so if there's value in having awful experiences, that's the outcome. So we learn how to stand in that authority, how to negotiate it, how to live from it, how to create from it, how to run our lives from it. And that's the evolutionary impulse. And actually, that's the consciousness we need to go with the shift that's going on.
Yes. Yes, exactly. That is one of the keys to mastering and being masterful. And as I said on my first program, mastery isn't about the ego personality. Oh, look, I'm a master. It's about being masterful in our choices and knowing we have choices. And from what place do we make that choice in our life? And that's, to me, one of the beauties of noetic balancing is we begin to have a direct experience of that place beyond that reflected mirror, right? From that place of just illusion of who I am. It's like we begin to embody that other reality, that greater reality.
Yeah, well, and it's very nice because most of the time we're living from what we might call a fear-based reality. We're always worried about what's going to happen, what may go on. And so the shift is from that to, a grace-based or love-based reality. You can start living out that eternal self.